Hello, I'm now going to record Daf Ayin Dalid. I'm going to start from Ayin Gimel and Beis, just a little bit before the bottom, where it says V'Hadash, because there's something I want to point out. Tana, we learned in a Brayse, Hadash, somebody who threshes grain. V'Hamenapetz is somebody who beats flax in order to separate the fiber of the flax from its psilis, from its stalks. V'Hamenapet is somebody who beats cotton in order to separate also the seeds or the stalks from the cotton. Kulan melacha achasein. It's all one melacha. They're all dash, because in dash what you do is you crush the grain in order that the straw will separate from its seeds. And by menapet also what you're doing is you're beating, whether it's flax or it's cotton, in order to separate the fiber that you want from the stalks or seeds that you don't want. Now what's interesting, I want to point out, is that one of the 39 melachas is menapetz. But the word menapetz here is different than the menapetz there. There, menapetz is speaking where you're combing or running your fingers through shorn wool in order to straighten it out. That's a melacha that's done in wool, or combing, or combing out the wool, or straightening it out. That has nothing to do with menapetz here, because that's wool. And over there, you're not separating the wool from anything else. And also, dash has to do with something that grows from the ground, and wool doesn't grow from the ground. So the menapetz of the 39 melachas has nothing to do with the menapetz here. This menapetz here is a different kind of menapetz. As I said, whether menapetz or menapet, you're either beating the flax in order to separate its psilis from the fiber of the linen, or your menapet, you're beating the cotton in order to separate the cotton fiber from its psilis. Those are all similar to dash, the threshing. The Mishnah said there's zaira, that's winnowing, that's throwing the mixture of the grain and its straw into the air so the wind blows away the psilis. Bayer is selecting any psilis that's still left. Teichen is grinding, and meraket is sifting. Zog the Gemara, haina zaira, haina bayer, haina meraket. Throwing taking a big pan and throwing the threshed grain into the air separates the psilis from the regular. Bayer is also picking out the psilis from the regular. Meraket, when you sift, you're also separating the psilis from the regular. So those are three malachas that have the same function. Is Abayev Rava Damri Tarbaya, Abayev Rava both say called Milsa Davi Mishkan. As long as this action was in the Mishkan, Avagav the Ikad the Dam Yalei, even though there's malachas that are similar to each other, Choshev lo, we count them as three avos. Hope I have the time to point out. You see, chayrish, for instance, means plowing. But in essence, the malacha is not the translation of chayrish, plowing. It's terrain improvement. For instance, fertilizing unseeded soil is called chayrish, because it's terrain improvement. Watering soil is terrain improvement, if there's no seeds in it. Zaireya doesn't necessarily mean sowing seeds. Taking a flower pot and putting it in the window where it makes it grow is called Zareya, because Zareya means making things grow. So therefore you see that every Av Malacha, it's not really the translation of the Malacha, but it's the intent of the Malacha. On the other hand, here we have three Malachas where the intent is the same, to separate the psilis from what you want in order to make what you want clean and usable, and nevertheless it's three separate Avos, because in the Mishkan, all three Pu'ulas existed. So therefore, sometimes when the Pu'ula existed in the Mishkan, what's Asr is anything that has the purpose of that Pu'ula, like terrain improvement is Chayrish, and making things grow is Zareya. On the other hand, sometimes you have three Malachas that all have to do with separating Psilis from Eichel, yet it's three Avos. The Gemara asks, "V'lichshav nami kaisish." Why don't you count kaisish? Kaisish means even when you have clean grain, you still pound it in order to remove the outer shell of the grain from the clean grain. Rabbi, don't make an issue of kaisish, because shekain ani eichel pita v'lo ksisha. Because a poor man can eat bread without it. A poor man will make bread with the outer shell in it. So therefore, we didn't count as kaisish as an av malacha. Rav Amar Rabba says, Hamani, this goes according to Rabbi. Damar Avis Malachas Arbam Chaser Achas. He said before that Avis Malachas are 39. The Choshev Kaisish, and if you're going to count Kaisish as another, Havilei Arbam, that makes 40. The Gemara says, so V'leipik Chodami Hanachalei Kaisish. So then take out, I don't know, take out Zaira, take out Bayer, take out Merakid. If Kaisish is a fourth one that separates Psailis from Eichel, how did you know which 3 out of 4 to count? And the Mechavarta, it's clearer, Kedabai Abayas Teretz, that Kaisish is not always, even though they did Kaisish in the Mishkan, but Kaisish is not such an important activity because an Ani eats his bread without being Kaisish as Chitim. So there's 2 Pshatim and the Rishainim. According to some Rishainim, Kaisish is an Av Malacha. The only thing is that it wasn't counted as an Av Malacha. It wasn't counted because they only counted the things that you absolutely have to have. But since Kaisish existed in the Mishkan, Kaisish is an Av Malacha. So if somebody, let's say, is Kaisish and he's also Bayer, so he'd be Chayiv 2 Chatois, because it's really 2 Av Malachas. Most Rishonim say that no, Kaisish is not an Av Malacha. It's really part of Dash, and therefore Kaisish and Dash are like 2 Av Malachas. They're together. The same way that Eifa and Mevashel are also 2 Av Malachas. But if you do Kaisish and Dash, or Kaisish or Kaisish and Bayer, you're not going to be Chayiv, because Kaisish is part of Dash. Taner Rabbanan Hayu Lefan of Mina Eichlin. If a person has kinds of food, but here Rashi says it doesn't mean, it means you can have either food A or food B. It doesn't matter what kind of food you have. So the Bryce is a mystery. The Bryce says Bar V'Eichel, Bar Meniach. You can select to eat. You can select for others to eat. V'lo Yiver, but you shouldn't select. Then Bear, and if you selected, you're Chai V'Chatas. So there are 4 halachas. You can select for yourself. You can select for others. You're not allowed to select, and if you select, you're Chai V'Chatas. So my Kamar, first you say you're allowed to, then you say you're not allowed to. So the Gemara gives 4 pshotim. First, Amar Ula tries first, and he says, Hachi Kamar, the Brisa means Bar V'Eichel L'Bay B'Yayim. You can do Bayer for the same day, Ubayr Meniach L'Bay B'Yayim, and you can do Bayer even for others to eat, as long as it's for that day. But L'Mocher Lo Yiver, but don't be Bayer in order to be able to eat the food tomorrow. V'Imber, and if you were Bayer for tomorrow, you Chai V'Chatas. So Maskiv Rav Chizda asks a kasha. Assuming that Bayer is Aser, so why is there a heter to be Bayer for today, if Bayer is a Malacha? Are you allowed to bake for Shabbos? Are you allowed to cook for Shabbos? So if it's really a malacha, what's the heter of doing it because you need it for today? Elamar Rav Chizda tries attempt number 2. Bar v'achel pachas mikashir, bar maniach pachas mikashir. You can select and eat if it's less than a greg heres, and you can select and put away for others to eat if it's less than a greg heres. But v'kashir lo yiver, but don't be bar greg heres. Don't be bar so much food equal to a greg heres. Then bear, and if you did, you're chayiv v'chatas nisa deraisa. Rav Yosef Maskiv Rav Yosef attacks. What are you talking about? Are you allowed to bake less than a shir, even though you're not chayiv v'chatas on pachas mikashir? But we hold chatzi shir as aser min hatayra. So therefore, how can you be bar v'aychel pachas mikashir? How can you do less than a shir? By the way, there's a shita. That says that chatzi shir is aser min hatayra. There's a chacham tzvi. A chatzi shir is aser min hatayra is only a chatzi shir of macholes asuros. From our Gemara, it would seem that that's not true, because here we're not talking about macholes asuros. We're talking about malach of Shabbos, and the Gemara says the chatzi shir of a malach of Shabbos is also aser. Elam Rav Yosef tries a third shot. Bar v'achel biyad and bar maniach biyad. As long as you do your selecting with a hand, it doesn't matter whether you do it for yourself or for others, it's okay. B'konain u'betamchui, using a cylinder or using a large bowl, lo yivra, you shouldn't do it because that's already a utensil. But vimber, if you use that cylinder or a bowl, you're poter avalaser, because normally people do not do breira with a cylinder or a bowl, but rather they use a more professional tool. But benafa kavara, if you use a professional tool, a sieve or a sifter, lo yiver, don't do breira, vimber chayav chatas. And if you do it, you're chayav chatas. So you're allowed to do breira biyad. You're not allowed to do breira with a utensil. If you use an unusual utensil, it's an issa derabanan. And if you use a real utensil, which is meant for bayer, you're chayiv and issa deraisa. Maskiv la Rav Hamnuna midikonim v'tamchi ktani. But the Brisa never mentioned anything about using an unusual, and Rashi says, or a usual utensil. In other words, if the difference between the first part of the Brisa, which says you're allowed, and the second part of the Brisa, which says you're not allowed, is the difference between using hand and using utensil, there should have been some clarification in the Brisa. The Brisa should have said, yes, you can do bayr biyad for yourself or for others. B'amed dvarim amurim biyad. Avol, if you use a utensil, if it's an unusual utensil, it's a derabanan. If it's a usual utensil, it'll be a deraisa. So I think you're putting too much into the brisa. Try shot number 4. Elam Rav Hamnuna. Rav Hamnuna says, bayr v'oichel metach p'sailis, bayr maniach oichel metach p'sailis. You can either for yourself take the food out of the p'sailis, or for others you can also take the food out of the p'sailis. But p'sailis mitach oichel le'yiver, don't take p'sailis from oichel, then bear chayiv chatas. And if you did take p'sailis from oichel, that's an iser deraisa. Maskiv l'Abayis, Abayis still asks, midi oichel mitach p'sailis k'tani, but it didn't say that. You see, there's a major difference between whether you take the food out of the p'sailis or take the p'sailis out of the food. And if that's what the Brisa meant, the Brisa should have been more clear to say that you can take, you're allowed to take for yourself or for others, you're not allowed to, because it's a major difference between one and the other, and the Brisa should have had a seam to tell us the difference in the Reish and the Sefer. Elam Rabbi, Sabai comes with the 5th and last pshat, and he says, bar v'achal la'alter, bar meniach la'alter. You can be bar, again, with your hand, and to eat it right away, or you can be bar for others to eat right away, but ulubay b'yaim la yivra, but don't be bar for it to be eaten later in the day. Then bear, and if you were bar for later in the day, nasa kibar la'itzer, it's like you did brayer in order to store it, and that would be chayav achatas. Now here the Gemara doesn't ask anymore. The Brisa should have differentiated between now and later, because the difference between hand and utensil is a very clear difference. So that the Brisa should have said, hand is okay, utensil is not okay. Even oichel mitach p'sailis versus p'sailis mitach oichel is a very clear and distinct difference, and the Brisa should have clarified that distinct difference. But to eat right away or to eat a little later is very hard to discern. So that the Brisa didn't have a clear way of discerning. So the Brisa said sometimes you can be bar and it'll be mutter, and sometimes you'll be bar and it'll be aser. And it waited for Abai to clarify that for immediacy it's mutter, and for after immediacy it's aser. Amru Rabbanan kamed the Rava. The Rabbanan told Rava Abai's pshat in the Brisa. Amruluni said, well done. Shaper Amar Nachmeni. Abai said a good pshat, and that's the difference. So therefore, as everybody knows, in order to do Bayr on Shabbos, you need 3 conditions. You need, it should be done by hand, not with a utensil. You have to take the eichel out of the psailis, and not psailis out of the eichel. And it has to be done for immediate use. And only when you have all 3 positive conditions, then you can do Bayr on Shabbos. If there's any of the conditions are missing, then it's going to be aser, even deraisa. So hayu lefanav shnei minei eichlin. Here, Rashi translates differently. Here we're talking about you actually have food A and food B, but you want A and you don't want B. Uber v'achal uber v'niach, and you took A out of B. Rav Ashi masni poter. Rav Ashi says it's an issa derabanan. Rav Yirmi medifti masni chayiv. Rav Yirmi medifti said it's an issa deraisa. Rav Ashi masni poter. Rav Ashi says that your poter v'otani. Before we said chayiv, we said you're chayiv for a deraisa. Again, if you did all 3 conditions right, it would be mutter l'katchila. But here you used the utensil. So Rav Ashi said it's pater aval aser, you use the cylinder or a large bowl, which is an unusual way of doing bayr. So it's an issa derabanan. Rabbi Yirmi medifti, speaking when you use the nafa ukavara, use the siver sifter, which is the usual way of being bayr, that's an issa deraisa. Because even though you're taking oichel matech apsailis, and even though you're doing it for immediate use, you can't use the utensil to do your brayer. Kiyasa Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came to Bavel, Amar, he said, Shabsa de Rav Bibi Avoy. It was the Shabbos where Rav Bibi was serving the Talmidim on Shabbos. V'iklo Rav Ami v'Ravasi, Rav Ami Ravasi came, Shada Kamayo Kakola de Peri. So he put before them on the table, he put out a whole bunch of fruit, and he put it out when the fruit was still attached to whatever it's attached to. So the grapes were still attached to their stems. I don't know why he did that. Is it imishim the savar oichel mitach psalis aser? Is it because he holds even taking the grape off the stem is also aser? That's why he didn't do it. Or imisham, and they would do it because that's derech achila, but he wouldn't separate it for them. Or imisham ayin yafahu the mechaver, or maybe he just wanted to make it look like it's more, so he gave them like a whole cluster of grapes, or he gave them fruits that also had the leaves on it and with the stems to make it look more. Here comes a sophisticated little piece. Chizki Amar Chizki says, "Abayir turmusin mitach p'sayla shelen chayiv." Turmusin is a type of legume which needs a lot of cooking, and when after cooking it, if you take it out from its p'saylas, you're chayiv achatas. Really, lame ksaver Chizki, does Chizki hold eichel mitach p'saylas aser? You take the food out of its p'saylas, that's going to be aser, even if you use your hand and you do it for immediate use. Shani turmusim are different. The shalkile shiva zimni, they need to be cooked 7 times. V'ilay shalkile masrach. And if you don't cook it 7 times, and I'm sorry, if you don't take the eichel from the p'saylis, it'll go bad. Ukipsaylis mitach eichel dami. And it's considered p'saylis mitach eichel, and this needs an explanation. One pshat is the gra. The pshat is why is it that p'saylis mitach eichel is aser? Because when you take the p'saylis out of the eichel, you're purifying the eichel. And purifying the eichel is the malacha. You're not allowed to purify eichel. If you take the eichel out of the p'saylis, you're taking something to eat. If you take p'saylis out of the eichel, you're purifying the eichel. That's what people used to do with grain. They took all the p'saylis out, and then they stored their pure eichel. That's why p'saylis mitach eichel is aser, because you're purifying the eichel. Eichel mitach p'saylis is mutter, because all you're doing is you're taking it to eat. Here, what happens is this turmis, if you leave it with the peels or whatever, after it's cooked, it's going to go bad. So therefore, here there's a tremendous chiddush, that even though you take eichel mitach p'saylis, what you're doing when you take the eichel mitach p'saylis, but the purpose that you're doing it for is in order to purify the eichel. Because if you leave it with the peel, it's going to go bad. So here, taking the eichel out of the p'saylis is a form of purifying eichel, and it'll be aser for bayer. Even though usually eichel mitach p'saylis is good, because that's you're taking it to eat. But here you're taking the eichel out of the p'saylis in order to make sure that the eichel stays clean. And therefore, that's considered bayer. That's one shot. But there's a totally different shot with a different girsa that vilay shalki le masrach, not shakli, but shalki. And the story is a long story. It seems there's 2 grades of turmicin. The very good turmicin need to be cooked 7 times. But the inferior turmicin can be cooked 2-3 times, and that's enough. Consequently, what would you do? You'd cook all the turmicin 2-3 times, and then you'd separate the ones that are inferior, that already are as cooked as they're going to get, and from the better ones that still need to be cooked another 5 times. Okay, so now, what it's talking about is where you cooked it 2 or 3 times and you separated it. Now, it doesn't matter whether you took the inferior ones out of the better ones, so that's called p'saylis mitach eichel, because you took out the inferior ones. Even if you took out the superior ones from the inferior ones, but the inferior ones, since they already cooked 2-3 times, they're already edible. The superior ones still need to be cooked another 5 times. So therefore, they're considered in some way inferior, even though they're really superior. So taking one from the other would be considered taking p'saylis mitach eichel. You're either taking the inferior turmicin from the superior ones, so you can't take that out. And even when you take the superior ones out, that's also called taking out the p'saylis mitach eichel, because they still need to be cooked, whereas the inferior ones are already cooked. I'm going to try to load this up now.